Welcome, welcome to the Man Badger Fan Podcast. We are back. It's been many moons since we've come back to podcast for you guys. I'm Philander. I'm here with the Chris Smith 9, the D4 Respondent. Best thing that happened tonight. What was it for you? Tonight, just tonight. I'm springing this on you.
Well, the Cubs swept the A's, so that was awesome. In their new ballpark, they just absolutely destroyed them for 3 straight days. That was fun to watch. So let's go with the Cubs sweeping and looking pretty good so far, minus the bullpen a little bit.
Okay. For dinner, my my two older girls, they are at a sleepover tonight. So it was just Teddy, Kate, me, and Emily. And Emily made us macaroni and cheese with hot dogs.
Love it.
And it was so good. Good in a way that I just didn't expect, almost.
You want to know what's funny? I almost made macaroni and cheese with hot dogs tonight. Because we had some leftover hot dogs that we cooked the other day.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have any boxes of macaroni and cheese. But that was going to be the go-to. It's hilarious.
That would have been complete synergy. We're already feeling that now, but imagine what it could have been.
Right.
Okay. Well, this is kind of our Badger season wrap-up recap. We're just gonna run through these games that we didn't talk about. I went to Denmark for 10 days. Chris was in Vegas. We both have kids. Life has kind of passed us by. I did have Tim Schultz asking when we were going to podcast, and I said, I don't know.
Tim.
I don't know. Yeah, sorry, Tim. By the way, Tim's the only one that comments, so how about you guys? Other audience members should step up their game. We'd appreciate that. But, okay, so let's run down the games here, and then me and Chris are just going to highlight a couple. So Penn State, I don't even want to think about this game, but we lost at home to Penn State, 86-75. We lost the 4 seed, the double bye. Maybe Chris has thoughts, but then we get to the Big Ten tournament. Beat Northwestern 70-63, beat UCLA 86-70, beat Michigan State 77-74, and then lose to Michigan 59-53. We get to the NCAA tournament. We beat Montana 85-66, and then we lose to BYU in Denver, Colorado 91-89. Chris, what game do you first want to talk about here?
I want to talk about Penn State because I do think that the Penn State game changed the course of the entire season, which is crazy to say about a regular season game. But I think what happened with Penn State, you hit on it. We lost the double bye, which forced us to play 4 straight days in the Big Ten tournament. But losing to Penn State cost us Milwaukee, and if we played in Milwaukee, we would have been in the Sweet 16. We'd have had a completely different path. We would have avoided BYU. That changed the course of the entire season. Because if you beat Penn State, it doesn't matter how you did in the Big Ten tournament, I guarantee we would have jumped either Iowa State or Kentucky and played in Milwaukee as the 3 seed. And that was just a sheerly disappointing game. And what's interesting is we came out looking great. The first probably 5 minutes of the game, I think we were up 11. It was 20-9. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But we were firing on all cylinders. Remember, Klesmit was still out then. But all of a sudden, Penn State just found their groove, and defensively, we could not stop them.
We were up 18-5. 18-5 in the first 5 minutes.
Penn State got hot, and they just didn't slow down. And defensively, we looked lost. And no one really stepped up that game. Tanji didn't play that well. There's this sort of theme happening with home senior days at the Kohl Center where, Nebraska a couple years ago, we could have won the Big Ten championship outright, and we lost to them, and they were the second worst team in the conference. So it was weird because it was Penn State's last game. They weren't going to play in the Big Ten tournament, so it was literally their last game of the year, and they played like they just didn't care. And like I said, I think that cost us Milwaukee, which ultimately led to our demise in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the stats again. I remember talking in the group thread about DeMarco Dunn, number 2, who went 10 for 12 to hit 25 points. I think he averaged 9. He just went off. As a team, they were 11 for 19 from the 3-point line. Compared to us, we were 10 of 31. Just a weird game. And I remember watching and thinking, okay, we're going to finally turn it up. Okay, this is when we're going to do it. This is when it's right. It just never came. It just never happened. And credit to Penn State, they never had a lull within that whole rest of the game. But you just thought, okay, we're going to turn it on. And yeah, you have Tanji 2 for 13, Kamari McGee 4 for 11, Blackwell 6 for 15. You just had players that, you just didn't play well. And you thought maybe these seniors would step up. It's their last game in the Kohl Center. And it just wasn't the case. So, any last thoughts with the game?
No, I'm good with that one. We're gonna rinse that one out.
I never want to think about that game ever again. Like literally never. Okay. I was in Denmark for the whole Big Ten tournament, so I really didn't see any of the games. Chris, which one of the four do you feel like you want to talk about the most?
We'll skip Northwestern. Felt like we just played good enough to win. UCLA, we shot lights out from 3. That's sort of the moment where it looked like we were back to when that team was peaking midseason. And then beating Michigan State, I think that was the highlight of the tournament. I think you and I both said if we play them again, we will beat them as long as the game's not at Michigan State.
Yeah.
And we just played really well. Tanjay scored 32. He was clutch. But like defensively, we locked in. I think they only had like 5 or 6 offensive rebounds total.
Wow.
Which for us is a huge win, considering that was sort of our kryptonite all year and Michigan State's strength. Looking at rebounding, I apologize. They had 11, I'm looking at the wrong game. Hang on. I want to get the right numbers here. They had 11 the first time. Yeah, they only had 8 offensive rebounds for the entire game, but 7 turnovers against them was incredible. So Tanjay played really well. And then against Michigan, that's another game I just kind of throw out. Our legs were dead. We literally couldn't hit a shot. Everything was short. Michigan was doing the same thing. It was an ugly game. It reminded me of the old Badgers, kind of watching them in Bow ball and Dick Bennett ball. We just didn't have enough to win the tournament, which was disappointing. But beating Michigan State was the highlight. Tanjay had a really nice tournament up until Michigan, which, like I said, kind of discredit that. But it led us to feeling pretty good heading into the tournament. I would say until we got our seeding, I think we knew we were in a little bit of trouble with how good BYU was playing. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I want to talk about that game.
To some extent, and before we talk about that, I really do want to talk about the Big Ten tournament should not be played Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Is that what it is? Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah,
Sunday.
And it's the last game on Sunday too. I mean, it means nothing for the committee, I don't think, and it also goes up till like a half hour before the brackets are revealed.
Yeah, it means nothing. And yes, losing that game to Penn State, we didn't get the double bye. I think we would have been Milwaukee regardless of how this tournament went. Actually, we could have even lost to UCLA.
And I don't think it would have mattered. Still been, yep.
I don't think it would have mattered, and I think that's what's frustrating. So if you're the Big Ten, you have to think about when you do this tournament. And I don't know if you're locked into TV contracts or how the heck that all works, but you have to think about moving this tournament where it can matter, because right now it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I don't think, unfortunately, it will change because of the money and the exposure. They're literally the only game at that time. But here's the thing. My only gripe about that whole situation, it's not that the Badgers got Colorado. That's fine. They lost to Penn State. That was their shot to get Milwaukee. But it's that they put them as the second game on Thursday after playing the very last game of the regular season. They basically had to fly home from Indianapolis to Madison, basically pack up their stuff and head to Colorado. I just thought that was BS. But otherwise, I don't have any gripes with how they were. Getting a 3 seed is amazing. It's just, like I said, just that killer game to Penn State, I think changed potentially the entire course of their season.
Well, let's talk about the tournament because, you beat Montana. These are, by the way, these are 2 West Coast teams, right? You play Montana and then you play BYU. They're both on the West here. Maybe not Coast, but they're in the West. So you beat Montana, and I think on some level, 85-66, that's actually probably a scoreline that makes us look better than what the game actually was. I mean, it was within 6-7 points a lot of the game. And then you lose to BYU. I was at this game, and and I live in Denver. It was a home BYU game. And I cannot stress that enough. First of all, we talked about this before. Wisconsin fans, in terms of cheers and that kind of thing, not great. Not great. Really bad. BYU, the energy was insane. Like, I felt their energy, and it was one of those things where you just knew going in, okay, we're going to need to shoot well. We're going to need to shoot well to beat this team because this team is playing really well, especially offensively. And if you'd watch them at all, right, especially if you're watching at any Big 12 games here, when they beat Iowa State in Iowa State, they had lost 2 times in 2.5 months, both to Houston, a number 1 seed, who's in the Final Four. This was a good team. And so I think what was interesting throughout the game is that defensively, we just lacked. We lacked energy. We lacked toughness. A lot of offensive rebounds in the game. Chris, do you have a number for that? If you want to look it up.
9. Actually, it was only 9.
Okay,
Felt
it's
like
not.
more,
So I know, it did feel like more. BYU just had timely 3-pointers they were hitting. We were missing our open shots. They were making their open shots. And it felt like that all game. And then at the end of the first half, you have the sequence where I think you're down 6. I think you're down 6 at that point. And maybe, Chris, you could look at the play-by-play. And
8. They were down 8.
Okay, they're down 8. You have Tanji taking the ball. I think he steals the ball, if I'm wrong. I think he steals the ball. And in essence, we would have had one shot here. You have one shot that's, because I think he had 25 seconds or whatever. And already the way he was, dribbling the ball, you're like, he's going to attack. He's going to try to score. And then he passes it to Crowell. And again, just the lack of awareness. Crowell shoots it. And I think there's 10 seconds left. He misses it, of course, because he did not have a good game after the first 5 minutes of the game. And then BYU goes down and scores a 3-pointer at the buzzer of the first half. So in essence, this is a 5-6 point swing. You could make an argument it's a 3-point swing, right? Maybe it's just we're down by 8. But if we score a bucket there, we chill, we score a bucket, we're down by 6, down by 5. This is a different game. Now, you might think, well, whatever, right? It's 11 points. But you had a bad first half. This is a bona fide road game. I don't care what anybody says. This is a road game. And you're at elevation against a team that knows how to play at elevation. They're used to it, right? This is what they live. This is not where you want to be. And BYU never lost steam. But it wasn't until about the last 6 or 7 minutes we finally start playing defense. And then we all know the story if we watch the game. Tanji just goes crazy. He just starts taking over. There's a weird ejection of a BYU player for probably not a flagrant 2. It's probably not. But he gets kicked out. That gives us an extra swing there. I don't think we missed a free throw the last 7 minutes of the game. I think at the beginning of the game, we missed 5 of the first 7, which is just, we're the best free throw shooting team in the nation. It's just weird. It's just a weird start to the whole game. But, and so, yeah, I mean, to have a chance to win it or tie it was AKA remarkable already. Didn't love the shot. I still sometimes wish we drew up a play. I still sometimes wish we did that. I understand that Tanji was super hot. Maybe you give him the ball there. Maybe you think, oh, he's going to get doubled. He can kick it out. They end up playing everybody straight up. And even the play to get to that, I mean, it's Carter Gilmore diving on the floor, calling a timeout.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see the heart of the team really come out in that last 5, 6, 7 minutes. But just a little bit too little too late. And you lose by 2 to a very, very good BYU team who probably shouldn't be a 6 seed anyway.
Yeah, I think they were underseeded. I mean, I think everyone kind of knew that. Vegas knew too. This was a 1-point spread going into the game. I mean, I think it was sort of a pick'em. It played like a pick'em. BYU just got off to a good start. You talked about the sequence in the first half. Yeah, just defensively, it was it was hard to watch. I was looking up stats just to kind of refresh. BYU had 21 assists in that game, which is just remarkable for any team at any level.
I don't think they missed an open three. I think they
No,
had some contest. I don't think they missed an open three all game.
no,
It's crazy.
it was impressive, but that's how they played all year. So I wasn't that surprised. If you leave them open, they're going to knock it down. I don't have any issues with the shot at the end of the game. I totally understand put it in Tanji's hands, especially the way he was playing and the way he's played all year. Yes, I wish probably they would have drawn something up. I did go back and watch it a few times. Nobody was open. So if he's the one taking the last shot, I can live with it. I just don't love that he picked up his dribble where he did, because I think that put him in a pretty vulnerable spot.
Well, and I think at some point in that sequence, it feels like he might take a step back three.
Right.
And I think the defender was just enough there that he didn't. Which is, it was just, yeah, anyway. You're right, though.
Yeah.
He put himself in a bad position.
And I was totally fine with going for two there. In fact, where we were at, I didn't think we needed the three. I mean, unless it was wide open. Like, we had all the momentum. I think going to overtime, we would have been in a good position. It's just too bad how it ended. It didn't feel like that's how this season should end, just based on how much of a good ride it was. But we lost to a good team. And then, if you watched the next game, BYU against Alabama, we weren't going to beat Alabama on that day. So, and especially the way we play defensively. So, like, I was sad, but I wasn't heartbroken, just because I felt like we made our comeback and we gave ourselves a shot. And I think I can live with that to some degree. Just that first half was rough.
Yeah, the underseeding thing kind of bothers me because I think this just happens every year, right? Memphis gets a 5, BYU gets a 6. Probably shouldn't have happened that way. Credit to BYU, they deserve to win the game. This wasn't a fluke either. But yeah, it just goes back to that Penn State game. If you go to Milwaukee, it's just a different deal. But credit to BYU. And I think you're right. I think what you said there is really the feeling, I think, for most Badger fans. It just felt like this team, the way they played, it wasn't the way they had played all season. And part of that, I think, is the altitude. I'll be honest. I don't think it was like the biggest factor. But I think the altitude played a role. I think it being a bona fide home game for BYU, played a role. But I think the Big Ten tournament in particular was the killer. That's for me. I think that's for me where I'm like, this doesn't even matter other than the Big Ten tournament's awesome, and you want to win it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say there were times throughout this season, and we talked about this a little bit, where we did get exposed defensively. And so it wasn't a shock to me, just knowing how BYU played, that was a bad matchup for us. It's nice that we made adjustments at halftime, but that wasn't something. It's not like an anomaly that BYU did that to us, because there were other teams throughout the year that played really well and shot well, and we couldn't defend, especially when we talk about guards. And then, so it just came back to bite us in the worst moment. Just too bad.
So where does Tanji rank then? Right, we've talked a lot about John Tanji. By the way, the number 296 ranked transfer. Turning out a second team All-American. It's not a bad season for him. Where does he rank for you in terms of all-time Badgers?
That's a hard one, because the Russell Wilson's like the obvious comparison, who I hold Russell Wilson to this very high standard, because I loved his one season in Madison. I didn't care that it wasn't more than that.
Hayden Slivers loves Russell Wilson.
Maybe he loves Wisconsin Russell Wilson. We have to ask him about that at some point.
Yeah, we should.
Tanji's, he's up there for me, though, just because of how much in control he was at all times, how unselfish he was. He cared about his teammates. He never complained. He's just like that type of guy. It's almost impossible not to root for. The comparison I keep hearing is like, let's compare Johnny Davis's last year with John Tanji's last year. Davis was a better rebounder, but Tanji was more efficient. I think I like Tanjay more than Davis, just based on the way he played. Like I said, his unselfishness, his ability to get other people involved. He wasn't as great of a defender, but I would put Tanjay kind of in that somewhere between the 5 to 10 range. There's a lot of Badgers that I love. I love Michael Flowers. I love Jordan Taylor. Um,
Gosh,
I
Jordan
love
Taylor.
Ethan Happ. I know like a lot of people don't, but I loved Ethan Happ.
Ethan Happ
Um,
was a tactician, man. He just
right.
like he was so incredible around the basket in a way that like nobody else. I mean, Tyler Wall had like some of that in him, but Happ was like
Yeah.
it was physique. It was
He's a,
it was just angles. It was incredible what he
People
could
forget
do.
he was a 2 time All-American. Like that's how good he was.
Yeah,
Um, but then guys like Decker and Kaminsky, like so Tanja's kind of like said in that 6 to 10 range, but this season was special. I think we kind of knew it as it was unfolding. But the best part about it is that he never hit that like dip. In that one
no,
game against USC where he scored 0, Badgers
yep.
still won. But otherwise he was efficient all season and he was clutch against the best teams. So we're gonna miss him. Uh, he's kind of that one you can't really replace with one player.
I think in some way he like made the season really special. You know, like in a way that I don't think any other player could have with this team. Um, You know, we could have gotten a good transfer that was a shooting guard, and we would have been good, but we wouldn't have been, you know, a 3 seed. We wouldn't have been getting to the Big Ten final. So for me, yeah, he definitely ranks ahead of Johnny Davis for me as well. The efficiency, but even the character. Not that Johnny Davis is bad character, but you can just tell like John Tanji was just like he wasn't cocky in the same way. He wasn't as athletic as
No,
Johnny Davis, but he just like you said he was efficient, but he also knew 95% of the time he was making the right decisions. And then he was hitting these fadeaway threes in the corner where you're like, I don't think I've seen anybody hit those as consistently as you. you know for me, he's probably 4 or 5, because like you said, there's all these famous Badgers that in our growing up years that were just incredible. Devin Harris will always be number one for me,
yeah,
just based
that's
on
that's a good one.
when I was watching. But yeah, I'll never forget John Tanji. I mean, it was just that kind of season, and to the point that he could have been first team All American. I mean, the guys ahead of him, it's tomato. You know, you can't really argue against any of them, but he had
Yeah,
the chance to be that.
if they didn't stumble those last couple games of the year, he was, I think, ahead of Braden Smith with about 3 games to go to win Big Ten Player of the Year, and he just didn't finish. Like those last couple games were that was probably his worst stretch of the season. But then he picked it right back up in the Big Ten tournament, and I think that's what makes him special. Is that when he hit a lull, he was able to overcome that. It was awesome.
And Braden Smith is worthy. I mean, Braden Smith had an incredible year.
Yeah,
So but I think you're right. Like even that Penn State game, that was his other really bad game of the season, which is unfortunate. The last one at the Kohl Center. But so for you, like 2024-25 season, um, if you were to put it in a couple sentences, or if you were to kind of give just a few thoughts to like how this season ended, or just generally what you thought of the year, what would you say?
I would say this is one of the most overachieving teams in the Bo Ryan, Greg Gard era. Uh, like we talked about with Tanjay, if you take Tanjay off this team, and I kind of want to talk about this when we get to the offseason, this team is not that talented. In fact, like if you put our 5 against any other 5 in the Big Ten or close to it, going into the year, you're going to say that we're probably a 12th place. Like we're projected to finish was probably realistic. So Tanjay was able to make up for a lot between him and Blackwell. Probably one of the best 2 guards we've ever had on one single team. And then just like this team played for each other. They were fun to watch. There was no egos. Greg Gard put together probably his best coaching season he's ever had. I think this is the start of an ascension of the program again. I think we've been in the lull. I think this is the team we look back on and think like this is what got us over the hump to really make us a real threat year after year.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like Crowell, I think had his best year, and I don't think it's close. Um, Carter Gilmore came out of nowhere. to be almost a cult, have a cult following. Kamari McGee literally shut the lights out from three the first 2/3 of the year. He did slow down the last third, but man, I mean, you could tell like he put the work in. And then Blackwell, I don't think I've seen a guard that physical that we've had in a long time. It's almost as if he had that it factor, has that it factor, or that like next gear that like we just don't often see in Badger players. Yeah, and then you saw Winter, which we've seen bigs take a step back year two. Like even Frank Kaminsky. I mean, year two, if you look at year two, it was not great. It was not great. And Winter, I think, just found his role in the team perfectly. And the installation of this new offensive system, the 5 out, I mean, it was just fun to watch, and they executed it very well all year. And so, man, it was such a fun season to be a part of, such a fun season to watch. Obviously disappointing in the end. But even the fact that we came down back from 10, well, I think we were down 11 with like 3 minutes to go or 4 minutes to go, something crazy like that. You should look at the play-by-play with it. For us to come back and have a chance to win the game or tie the game, I mean, it was really a magical year. You know, definitely some dips, right? The Penn State game in particular is a dip, but I think overall, especially where we were supposed to project to be finished, I think to have the season we did was incredible. I mean, it was a fun ride.
Yeah, down 11 with 2 minutes and 34 seconds. It's crazy.
Without Tanji, we lose by double digits.
Yeah,
that's what that game is. Well, so obviously we saw some intensity from John Blackwell, John Tanji, even Stephen Crowell, right? I mean, he's kind of nice, tall white guy, but he showed some fire. Tell us about this kind of new realman of genius that we're going to feature tonight.
Yeah, today we want to salute Mr. Overly Intense Rec League basketball guy. We all know this guy. While others show up to the gym in a random t-shirt and mesh shorts, you roll in with matching team uniforms, custom sneakers, and a laminated playbook. You call out defensive rotations like you're coaching in the NBA Finals, even though your teammates are just here for the cardio. When a questionable foul is called, you demand a replay review that doesn't exist. You yell, "and one," even when you airball a layup. That is a real thing. That happens a lot. You set hard screens on unsuspecting accountants, full court press a guy who clearly has shin splints, and call your own timeouts like there's a sponsorship deal on the line. And when the game ends, you send a detailed post-game analysis to the team group chat, breaking down the assist-to-turnover ratio of people who stopped listening 3 texts ago. But hey, champions aren't made in the off-season. They're made on a Tuesday night at the local YMCA. So here's to you, Mr. Overly Intense Rec League basketball guy. Because of sweatbands, knee braces, and shouting, "Let's run it back," won championships, you'd have a dynasty.
Out of the man core, who most represents Mr. Overly Intense Rec League basketball guy?
Oh, it's Fremdog. I think it's gotta be Fremdog. What about you?
What about Matty? Is Matty G up there? It's close.
Yeah.
But I've never played sports with Frem.
He goes hard. Yeah.
I could see that. Should have visited his Thursday night rec league basketball team.
Right, he's living this.
We could really see what he's like. All right, well, let's get to the off season. You know, the portal, man. It's an experience. It's a ride. We're all in it together. Portal Kombat. Gosh, that's good. You could trademark that.
I stole that from somebody.
Oh, did you? Who?
Yeah, I saw it on X. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that's really good. Portal losses to date for us. Lose Cameron Hunter. We got him from Arkansas State last year. Had a couple games cameos. Was fairly ineffective. It looked like he had some promise, but just didn't get a lot of minutes this year. the weird one, the big one that's kind of just interesting. You lose Daniel Freitag, who at the point that we recruited him was the highest rated recruit guard that guard had ever gotten. No pun intended. And he's already had, I guess, 24 teams reach out. It's interesting. And then we lose Chris Hodges, who has been a kind of a power forward. He's number 21. Is that correct?
21.
Yeah. So definitely is a guy that has ridden the bench, come in late, late game cameos, that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on any of these losses here, Chris?
I'm going to wait to talk about Freitag until you go first, because I know you have some thoughts on it. Losing Cameron Hunter is sad to me, only because I wanted him to be good. But he was hurt. He was sick for part of the year, which put him back, and then he got hurt. He just wasn't ready for Big Ten basketball, and obviously being pushed back, like it just wasn't a fit. And Hodges was a team guy. I think everyone loves him. He was like a 3 or 4 star recruit and just didn't develop. It just didn't work out. So, my thoughts on this is losing all 3 of these guys doesn't bother me, because in the world of today's portal, like you can build a legit roster each year. And I don't think any of these guys would have played this year. So I have no issues with it. But I want to hear your Freitag thoughts.
Yeah, I think just whenever he was in the game, right? It was always toward the end of a game. He didn't look dominant. He looked like he had skill. You could see the skill. But you could definitely tell he was raw, or you could tell that he couldn't see the court in terms of the speed as well. I saw an interesting he had this whole article on the Athletic, if you subscribe to it. In essence, describes kind of the end of the season and all this kind of stuff that didn't happen or happened, all that. I'm reading the comments, and then in essence, some guy who I think follows prep basketball in Minnesota. In essence, Daniel Freitag had a chance to go, maybe it was to California, to this, one of these high schools where you in essence just play really, really competitive basketball. And he decides to stay in Minnesota at I don't know what division, but a lower division, team. He takes him to the state championship, all this stuff. But in essence, he didn't play a tough league his last year of high school. He didn't play the competition that he probably needed to play to then join a Big Ten team that ends up being in the top 5 in the Big Ten. And so I think just that tidbit or that nugget gave me some perspective on Daniel Freitag, where it's okay, he had the chance to maybe go to a school, and granted, you stay your hometown, I get it. But you have a chance to go to a school where you could play some really high level basketball, really improve, see where you're at, that kind of thing. And he doesn't choose it. And I think that actually hurt him. I actually think that hurt him this year. And maybe, right, even though he's that highly ranked, he just wasn't actually going to be a Big Ten basketball player. Obviously, you could see the skill, but when he was out there, he never dominated. He never looked that much better than even these kind of lower level guys. Chris, what are your thoughts with Freitag?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. So here's my thoughts. He definitely looked overmatched every time I saw him on the court. He was insanely athletic. He had one game where he, in garbage time, had a dunk where he didn't even have to jump from that far away. And he's not the tallest guy. And so he just had this sort of standing dunk, and you're like, whoa, that athleticism is crazy. And he's loyal to Wisconsin. He wanted to stay. That's kind of the other piece to this. But my thoughts are, honestly, in today's world, you can't keep guys like this. He's a developmental player. And when you're a team like the Badgers, you are playing against you're competing against these other teams who are going to dive into the portal and get players that are going to help you now. And he definitely wasn't going to help us next year. I don't think he would have played. I don't even know if he would have helped us the year after. I don't know if he truly fits our system in the way that we want to play. So honestly, I have no issues with it. at all. It sounds like the staff, I read a lot of interesting quotes this week. The staff were basically brutally honest with him and basically told him he should leave. And he didn't want to. But he said like the staff told him this and like didn't back down. Like they essentially told him he needs to go. So that part's sort of like that's sort of the sad part of college athletics right now. Um, but here's my other piece is that I think as fans, it's sort of like the Graham Mertz syndrome. Like we get caught up in recruiting rankings, and all these things. So Daniel Freitag is a hot name in Madison, but if you watch him play, Jack Janicki was better than him, and Jack Janicki was unranked and was a walk on. So like if you take recruiting rankings aside, anyone who watched Daniel Freitag this year was probably like, yeah, he wasn't that good. Like you would totally understand why he's leaving. So there's sort of like this somewhat backlash of like, oh, this is just a sign of the times. Like Freitag should have stayed. He's going to go somewhere and light it up. Like I don't see it. And honestly, I think this is best for both parties.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I mean, he's a guy who'd be like, why isn't he playing? You know, it'd be like a totally different narrative. And then the thought would be, okay, maybe year 2 he makes a jump. Oh, he's like good, but like still kind of lacking. And then year 3, like you're just not going to have those guys, or it's going to be very rare now in college basketball, especially amongst the Power 5 schools. And so, yeah, it is a bummer it didn't work out. But I think you're right. I think it is best for both parties. And I think even them being brutally honest and saying, hey, like, we don't actually see you playing next year. And then after that, we're not sure. I think that is the move. And again, he's a scholarship player. And so you actually need those spots. On some level, you need some of those spots. And so, yeah, I could tell he's a team player, tell he really cared about the team. But I think it is right. It's interesting to say that it's a hot name in Madison because you're right. There was a lot of buildup for 2 years here. Did people question why he wasn't playing during the year? Or was that not really in the conversation?
Because they were playing well. I don't think so, but there was definitely some mixed feelings when he entered the portal. Like a lot of people like, whoa, I can't believe that. Like he's our next kind of big thing. I'm sitting there like, man, if you watch him, it just wasn't it.
No. Yeah. I think anybody that watched, especially the end of those games, it never looked like he was dominating these like lower level players. So,
and he was just out of control, like a lot. Like I said, I like the guy. I appreciate his loyalty to Wisconsin. The staff recruited him hard for multiple years. He wanted to stay with the team next year. Like all those things I love. But in today's landscape, I just don't think a team like the Badgers can keep a guy like that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the portal additions. So we haven't signed anybody officially yet, but we're trending for these two names. Training for Nick Boyd. So Chris is going to have to tell you about that. I've never heard of this guy. Sorry, Chris. And then training also for Andrew Rohde. Andrew Rohde. By Goff and Rohde. Training for Andrew Rohde. Chris, tell us about these two players. What have you heard? What have you read? I know Andrew Rohde played at Virginia. Looked like a pretty solid player, but tell us what you know about these two guys.
Yeah, so Nick Boyd is a guard and could come in and be our point guard. He was on the Florida Atlantic Final Four team and actually was their second leading scorer on that team a couple of years ago. And then transferred to San Diego State last year in the portal and played really well. He averaged 14, 4, and 4 a game. He's about a 37-ish% three-point shooter. He's a guy that can come in and instantly be the starting point guard and be a great complement with John Blackwell. So he's a guy, if we seal that deal, that's a big deal for us. Like he's an instant starter and someone that will average 10 plus a game and probably get 4 or 5 rebounds and 5 assists. That's a big, big name. And here's the thing about Nick Boyd is we are going up against UNC and it sounds like we're going to win. So that's a really big deal for the Badgers and showing that we probably do have some more NIL money than we've had in the past. Andrew Rohde he's listed as a guard. I think he's more like he's like a 3, sort of like a hybrid guard forward. He played at Brookfield Central and then committed out of high school to St. Thomas, who was a D1 pro. It was their first year as a D1 program. And as a freshman at St. Thomas, he averaged 17 points a game, and absolutely just lit it up. Went to Virginia. His first year didn't play a lot. This past year, once Tony Bennett left, I think he would have started anyway. But averaged about 10 points a game. I want to say 5 rebounds ish. He's a guy that has a really high ceiling, but if you know anything about Virginia basketball, they just don't play this like high attack offense. They play slow, sort of like the Badgers used to play.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like a good fit for him. He's a shooter. He's a guy that could come in and hit a lot of threes for us. I don't know much about his defense. I guess that would be my one question. But he's a guy that also will come in and start if he comes in. So 2 really nice names that I hope we're able to seal the deal on, and still leaves us 2 open spots for other guys in the portal too.
Well, it's interesting, the whole UNC versus Wisconsin thing. So to say A, that we have more NIL money, but then B, that we're actually could beat a borderline blue blood. I wouldn't say borderline. They are a blue blood within college basketball. Yeah, it shows where we're at.
And I'll say with Rhodey too, he's one of Iowa State's top targets in the portal. He visited Iowa State a couple days ago, didn't sign, and then visited Wisconsin last couple days. And now the reports are that like we're probably going to win over Iowa State. Like those are 2 big wins for us.
Well, Madison is cooler than Ames. There's no doubt about it. But, well, cool. We'll try to keep you guys updated on other transfer potential additions. What happens to these 2 guys? What are your just overall feelings on the portal?
I've done a complete 180 on the portal. I've grown to love what it is because I'm a fan of a Power 5 school in the Badgers. I love the fact that we can go in and get guys for 1 to 2 years, guys that fit our system, fit the way that we want to play. We can sort of recruit off of these other teams, which there's a sad element to that. But I love the fact that like Boyd and Rhodey are guys that we would have never seen play for the Badgers. And now they have the opportunity to do that. And we can go and basically scout guys that we want from other rosters. Again, it's sad for sort of the mid-majors, but I love the idea of losing Hunter, Freitag, and Hodges. These are guys that weren't going to help us next year. We can essentially say, hey, go play for someone else. We're going to bring in guys that can help our team. And me as a fan, this is just selfish, but as a fan, I want to put together the best roster possible every year. I want to think that we have a shot to win the Big Ten every year. And the portal allows us to do that. There doesn't have to be rebuilding years. The quote I keep hearing from coaches is get old, stay old. Like that's what the portal is going to be. You're just always going to have seniors, juniors on your team that have been developed, and you can plug them in and put them into your system. So a year ago was very sad, especially when we lost Chucky, which ended up being the right thing. He was incredible and an All-American. But now I'm starting to understand, now that the Badgers have embraced the portal, Greg Gard totally understands the landscape. He's not afraid to have these hard conversations. 2 years ago, he would not have told Chris Hodges to leave. He would have said, stay on our team. It's like Marcus Ilver. I think if we go back a year, I think Gard probably would have said, Ilver, you should probably go somewhere else. Instead, he kept him on the team. Like this staff has done a complete 180. They're all in on the portal. They understand their needs, and they're going to put together a roster that can compete. So, like I said, I've done a 180, and I if I was a mid-major fan, I would hate it. But as a fan of the Badgers, I'm embracing the idea of putting together a pretty darn competitive team each year.
I think for me, I'm just looking at the big picture of the portal. We need some guardrails. We just need some. That's the problem.
It's out of control.
2-year contracts make some sense to me. Maybe you can transfer once freely, and then if you transfer again, you have to wait out a year. Like I like putting some things in place with the portal where guys just can't jump ship every year because they're restless or because they're like, oh, the grass is greener somewhere, or almost that the academics now don't even matter. Because I think as an educator, you as well, that bothers me. It really does bother me. And then yet I completely know what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, there is no rebuilding. We can plug and play some guys. This offense that we played this year, the style we played, I mean, it was so fun to watch, and it was so fun to play in. You could see the players loved it, and that is going to bring us some potentially very good transfers. And so, as a Badger fan, like you said, it does feel good, right? Because it feels like you said earlier, like we were kind of in this lull. I think we all felt that, right? Even to the point the fire guard crowd was loud. It was getting louder, including myself. I was on the fence. And then after this year, I think you're right. Gardis understands the portal. He wouldn't have told Freetag to leave. He wouldn't have told Hodges to leave. He understands it, and they're all in with the rules that they currently are. But I do hope that guardrails do come in soon with it. You know?
Yeah. I agree with 100% everything you said. I'm speaking from the lens of, like, in the current reality of the portal, I think the Badgers are doing it the right way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're passionate about Wisconsin basketball, you know? But there's people that are passionate about other sports. And this is where we highlight Mr. Overly Passionate MLB Superfan. Today we celebrate you. While casual fans tune in for the playoffs, you're locked in from opening day like it's Game 7 of the World Series. Every single game, all 162 of them, matters to you like a mortgage payment. Your team loses in April, season's over. They win in May, start planning the parade route. You scream at your TV like the manager can actually hear you, analyze midseason batting slumps like your MLB's chief statistician, and argue about bullpen management like you have a direct line to the dugout. Friends and family know not to call, text, or even breathe near you during a close game. Because heaven forbid the opposing team hits a bloop single, you're one bad play away from flipping furniture. This sounds like fever pitch. And while the players are on the field, you're doing your part from home. You stand proudly for the national anthem in your living room, hand over heart, wearing a mustard-stained jersey from 2003. It's good luck. You belt out, "Take me out to the ball game" during the 7th inning stretch, even though no one else in the house appreciates your commitment. So here's to you, Mr. Overly Passionate MLB Superfan. Because while others enjoy baseball, you live and die with every pitch, every out, and every devastating bullpen meltdown. Which we're not talking about the Cubs, but we don't need to talk about a couple of days ago. We just swept the A's. It's great.
Really quick, it is funny how it is a 162 game season, but there are some games that just hit you differently when they lose.
Oh, yeah, it's so true.
But the beauty is the next day there's a game.
Yeah, or the other way around. Like you win these insane games and you remember them for your whole life. I'll remember the Christopher Morel home run where he just hits the crap out of the ball. It lines it instantly. He knows that it's a game winner. And do you remember this?
Yeah,
do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like you can even identify these things.
I've two.
Yes.
Can I do my two quick? One was in 2007. Aramis Ramirez hit a walk-off against the Brewers at Wrigley. That was the year where they were competing head-to-head for the division. Incredible moment.
That was awesome.
In Chicago during that time. I wasn't at the game, in Chicago. And two is David Bodie's walk-off grand slam on a 3-2 count with 2 outs in the ninth. Like that was everything.
I also remember this isn't a game winner or anything, but I remember when Glenn Allen Hill was like outside the batting box for too long. And so like the pitcher is pitching, he's not in the batter's box. He literally runs up and hits it and gets like a bloop single to right. This is like 98 or 99. Anyway, there's just like plays like that. Always remember. All right, let's talk about the roster just real quickly. 2025, 2026 roster to date. Guards, you have John Blackwell. 2, Nick Boyd, hopefully. 3, Andrew Rohde. Andrew Rohde?
Yeah.
Andrew? Okay. Hopefully. Jack Janicki, our crush. Kinzinger?
Yeah, Zach Kinzinger, he's going to be a freshman. He plays at De Pere. He's a high 4-star recruit.
Okay. H. Jones?
Hayden Jones is going to be a freshman. He's coming from New Zealand. He's a shooter.
So we'll that's right. Yeah, that's exciting. You have Baby Guard, who's a walk-on. And then you have Knopp.
Yeah, Aiden. I think it's Aiden Knopp. Yeah.
Also
with 2 walk-ons.
And then your forwards are Nolan Winter, our boy Xavier Amos, Robeson?
Jack Robinson. He's a freshman this year. He's a shooter. I'm curious what his development will look like.
4, our favorite Italian stallion, the Greppi, What's his first name again?
Ricardo.
Ricardo. It's even better.
It's-
Gosh, I hope he's good. I hope he turns out to be good. That'd be so sick. And then it's not Warlock, it's Garlock. What's his first name?
yeah, Will Garlock. He's a freshman coming out of Middleton High School, but is a
Hey.
four-star 7-footer. So
Oh,
he's interesting. I don't know what we'll get from him next year, if anything.
what are the biggest needs the team still needs to address?
They need a physical big and they need a shooting big. I think like if we sign these two guards and Rhodey and Boyd, I don't think we have a need for any more guards, to be honest with you. We need a stretch four, kind of like a winter type player, but we still have not replaced Micah Potter from that 2020 team. Like a guy that could come in, be super physical defensively, grab boards. Like, yeah, it doesn't really fit our 5-out system, but you need a guy like that in certain moments of games, or if you're going against physical teams. So to me, if we sign these guards, I think we gotta get two forwards in that like 6'9" plus range. One that's more of a shooter, and the other is just a physical dominant presence.
How do you replace a Steven Crowell? And again, like we've hated at certain points in his career, but I think he shot 40% from three. He was consistently putting up 15 to 20 a game. And how do you replace that? And like Nolan Winter is going to have a lot more opportunities, a lot more shots, all that stuff. But man, it feels like you need like either a physical big or still a guy a stretch four. I mean, Crowell at some level is a stretch five even. Um, so it's going to be hard to replace, but I think you'll see a step up from Xavier Amos in particular, and then whoever else we sign as a forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. If Amos steps up, like the need for a stretch four is a little less. Um, but yeah, if we can get bigger and like I said, bring in like we're looking at this guy. I can't remember the name off the top. Austin Rapp. He was the freshman player of the year in the West Coast Conference. Played at Portland, but he's a 6'10", basically 40% 3-point shooter who averaged like 13 and 7. Like if we can get a guy like that, that's perfect for replacing Crowell. And like I said, we just never were able to bring that physical big last year. I think we wanted to, we just didn't find the fit.
Well, and you just saw it. I mean, that was the weakness, was allowing offensive rebounds, and some games we played really well, like against physical teams, and we stepped up. And then there was other games where it was the crushing thing that lost us games.
But yeah, Portal Kombat is fun. Like I can't just not check my phone daily to see what's going on, who's going where. Yeah, there's too many players in the portal. It's like 1,500 right now. But this like it's like the NFL. Like it creates a storyline now that like I'm still super locked into what the Badgers are doing. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think Guard and the staff know exactly what they want, and they're not going to go out and get these guys that are developmental players. They're going to get guys that can come in and play, and that's pretty exciting.
Thank you for listening. We're so happy to be back with you. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, the X, YouTube, but no video. RIP. And iHeartRadio. You could still find us on iHeartRadio. If you can't figure out those other four, that's where you'll go. Go Bucky. We'll see you guys next time.